Lorena is a first-generation Dominican-American multidisciplinary artist, facilitator, and social designer. She believes in the power of design to heal and build power with communities. Her design practice centers equity, joy, liberation, and creativity. Lorena brings her experience from the education, youth development, and nonprofit sectors to imagine new and old ways of being and building beloved community. Currently, Lorena is building the design capacity of Black parents and caregivers through Parenting for Liberation's Innovation Lab, which provides financial support and design training for parents to launch their dream community-based projects. Lorena also works with small organizations to design programs, events, visuals, and everything in between. Lorena completed an MFA degree in Design and Social Innovation and holds a BA in Printmaking and Latin American Studies. Lorena loves breakfast any time of the day, fresh flowers, slow travel, all things letterpress, making zines, and scribing poems.
This is The Hidden Critique, where we discuss art, race, and higher education at the intersection of an MFA. I'm Marlon Tobias, pronouns he, him.
And I'm Krystle and Lemonias, pronouns she, her.
Welcome to our show.
Welcome. In this episode, we'll be talking with artist Lorena Estrella. Thank you for coming, Lorena.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm a little nervous, but I'm so honored to be here and to be having this conversation today.
Wonderful.
Of course. Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I've never been on the other side. So I'm
welcome to the other side. But because mental health is important, we value that a lot here at The Hidden Critique, especially when you're living the artist and entrepreneur lifestyle. To kind of break the ice a little bit, Lorena, how is your heart?
Oof, my heart. Listen, I had to look at a little feelings chart. So this morning, I am feeling really content, really appreciative to be here. And it's been a long week. So there was, definitely coming off of the disappointment of the US elections, the heartbreak, and now trying to, figure out what's next. So there's uncertainty there. There's, I did get some rest this weekend, but there's just a fatigue that's it just feels heavy. And so I'm trying to figure that out, especially stepping into this week, because, the second half of last week, it was rough. Rough. So I'm trying to get back into it. So my heart is, right now in this moment, really present and content, and also just holding all the different things that are happening around us. And it's a lot.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And just for clarity for our listeners, we are recording a week after the national election results. So we're all experiencing the aftermath. So, Chris, how about you? How's your heart?
I had to really think about this one this morning as well. I'm feeling the complexity that comes with understanding or really visually seeing where or how our country expresses freedom and how that may infringe upon others as they assume it is not. And I am sitting with that as I am also trying to be productive for our world and our community. And I am sitting in that complexity. And for the most part is moving with a lot of autopilot, but still trying to be present in ways that I can show up, though I am feeling exhausted. So that's how my heart is. Marlon, how about you?
I have a myriad of feelings depending on the hour of the day. I'm feeling thankful, though, for being alive, for having air in my breath, in my lungs, for having health, being a body that is able to maneuver and navigate this world, having a mind that is able to critically think and examine the world around me. And I am thankful for still being able to have a voice and have my talents and skills to push me forward. With all that said, on the other side, I'm feeling feelings of defeated and feelings of confusion, feelings of exhaustion. But I'm I'm trying to focus more on the things that I'm thankful for to help carry me through.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And all that said, we got community. Community is where it's
Oh,
at
yes.
right now.
Whew.
Community is where it's
Snapping
at
fingers.
to move
Yes.
forward in this time. And this podcast today is an expression of community and having conversation that nourishes and gives us some of that energy we need to continue the work that is meaningful to or passions or goals, but then also the community that we like to serve. So
Yes. And
Amen. And I say,
with that,
the world needs artists like more than ever, right? Like making sense of this moment, processing, like being in your feelings. I think that's what artists bring to the world, is like to support folks in processing and to also document, right? Like this moment. So this podcast is doing a part of that work as well. So thankful for all of you and for starting with like, the heart check, because that's really where a lot of the change needs to happen for a lot of folks.
mm-hmm.
True.
That hard piece.
True. But share with us your backstory. Tell us about what you are working on and a bit about your formal educational experiences.
Yes. So where should I start? So, Lorena, I'm born and raised in North Jersey. My parents are immigrants from the Dominican Republic. And I have had a lot of access to amazing educational opportunities in this country. And so really grateful for that. And that has really shaped the decisions that I've made, but also the worldview, right, that I have. And so as an undergraduate, I got to go to a liberal arts college, which was really awesome because I really needed that small environment. And I got to major in studio arts. So I learned printmaking. And I was like, oh, I can't just do art. So then I double majored because, of course, just trying to be an overachiever. And I also Latin American studies major and just had deep interest in sociology, anthropology, how do people and cultures think and move. And also in my art practice, trying to understand stories and narrative making. So I did printmaking as an undergraduate. And after my undergrad experience, I started doing community work in here where I'm from in North Jersey. I started doing youth work, so supporting young people in understanding their experiences. I ran a free after school and summer program that was social justice focused, heavy on the feminism. And it was just so beautiful. I think it poured back into me so much that I wish I had as a young person around being seen and affirmed by other women of color, activists, and in the spirit of taking action. So I spent 10 years in the nonprofit space, supporting young people and through programming and opportunities. And most recently, I went back to school. So 10 years later, I went back and got an MFA in something called Design for Social Innovation, which, is still a new emerging field. Not a lot of people have heard of it, but it was really a chance for me to think about how can I bring the experiences that I had now had around doing community work and moving towards social change work, but also infusing it with art making and creativity and working with others and collaboration. So, the program really supported me in building up some skills to really see myself as a designer and step more into my leadership. The program I used to run was leadership for young people. And then I was like, oh, where am I in my own leadership journey? So it gave me the opportunity to step back into myself and think about what kind of change do I want to create in the world. So after my MFA experience, I've, been working on my own. So I have a small creative studio where I work with individuals, mission-driven organizations, also many nonprofits around communication, supporting organizations in telling impactful stories. So I do a lot of different things, as you might know, but
many hats,
which folks might be really familiar with. So yeah, creating reports, events. I'm supporting a group of Black parents right now and stepping into innovation and seeing themselves as designers and creating change in their communities, which is really exciting. So all the things. And then the last, yeah, we could keep going, but
let me get a little bit more into this Design for Social Innovation MFA. What does that learning entail? Because I have never heard of this before you.
Yeah. So the program is fairly new. I want to say it's about 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And the coursework really takes you through thinking about how do we create change and how do we use design as a tool for changing the conditions that can move us towards thriving, right? So we know that we're living under so many oppressive systems, right? Capitalism, racism, sexism, all the isms. Like we're living in it. All of those were designed to a certain extent, right? Like the ways that power moves in our world is through the imagination of someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the program really gets you to think about systems. It gets you to think about how to build with others and think about social impact, like whatever that might mean. For some people, it's through like entrepreneurial. For other folks, it's through organizing. And so it supports folks in stepping into leadership around facilitation. We did like a games, like we thought about games and how games could be a tool for change.
Wow.
Visualization, mapping, seeing systems is one, understanding how things work. There's storytelling in there. So yeah, the program, it's intense. It's 2 years and I'm still trying to figure out like all the things that I've learned and
Yeah.
still
Wow.
processing that experience.
And so tell me, while you're in such a program that is fairly new, still growing in its, beginnings of being this type of program, how did you find working through what work would look like for you after all of this information? Did the program also kind of support for you to figure out where would you then whether make employment for yourself or where did you see yourself in a career? Like how does that work?
That's a great question. I started the program right before the pandemic. And so the pandemic's hit and towards the very end of my program. So we went right in the middle of like global change. We were finishing this program and figuring out what it means to be a social designer. And so, I think the program has still a lot of growth to do in terms of all the things that you're naming around like support. I think for me personally, what it helped me do is like articulate the kind of work that I want to do in the world, which is really about collaboration and working with communities, in supporting them and building the tools that they need to create change in their worlds and the things that they want to see, so that a lot of designers go into community and they're like, hey, we're working for community, but what does it mean to work with community? So I think for me, really supported the articulation and the kind of work that I want to do. And, I got to have exposure. I felt like I was in my little nonprofit bubble and I got to experience lots of different projects and lots of different ways that people are thinking about change, policy change. There were people in my program who were really interested in the environment and like trash and just like thinking of like we need all the solutions is also my thinking. And so I'm like, you want to work on trash? I love that for you. Like you want to work in food space. There's so many things that we need to intervene in the system. So yeah, I think part of it is figuring out what's the gift that you have and how can you support in the best way possible to bring about the kind of change that we want to see. So in terms of a career, I think that also left me being like, okay, there's still more to discover. And then honestly, I ended up in this like communications space around narrative change and cultural change work, which was new to me, right? Like, I think I was very much in the direct service space. And now to think about, well, what are the stories and the narratives we need to bring people along in the kind of change we want to see? So it's got me to think more expansively about the work and about how long things take to change too. So that's part of sometimes the frustrations. It's like, we want to see the change right now. And I think sometimes it's like, we got to be working towards the change for the generations to come. And I think that is sometimes hard to sit with.
Yeah.
But there's lots of possibilities. There's so many in-betweens.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Lorena, you definitely wear many hats and you definitely offer multiple services as a creator. So could you just tell us some of those specific services and what they really entail?
Yes, great question. So some of it is graphic design. So supporting organizations and individuals have the visuals that they need to communicate the work that they do. So there's the visual graphic design work. There's also the program design and the like learning arc of the program that people are building out. So I work with this amazing organization called Parenting for Liberation. So shout out to those folks. And so we are in our third year of building this thing called the Black Parent Innovation Lab. And
Congratulations.
so we're so excited. We get to resource up to 10 parents. We're based in California with $5,000 to invest in themselves and this dream project that they have for their community. So we are designing what a 6-month learning experience looks like for these folks. So that's like the program design and the facilitation and the skill building, capacity building that takes. And then I also do social media. So that's something that I started doing early in the pandemic, and that space is challenging, of course, but supporting part of having folks tell their stories, making sure that people can see. So on social media, like creating strategies where people can get their message out, people can find the work that they're doing and tell the story in really impactful ways. So that's some of the work. And then the last thing I didn't mention is that I am a new faculty to the program that I graduated from in design for social innovation. So I'm working with the first year graduate students in a fundamentals course that I'm honored to also co-teach, which is very helpful because teaching is a lot of work. It's very hard, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah, both know. Even just like reading all the writing that folks are doing in our and just to have someone's like the mind and the heart space to do the work with. So shout out to Mickey, and that has been really, really awesome because I love teaching. I love working with young people and to kind of see where the new designers, like what's emerging for them in terms of the way that they're seeing the world, the kinds of designers that they want to be. And yeah, so teaching is kind of the newest space for me in this new university space, and also a chance for me to kind of reclaim my own experience in the MFA program. Like there were so many gaps that I knew I was experiencing and naming, and felt like I spent a lot of time like, we need this. And I was fired up, okay. And now I don't know that I have that same energy, but it definitely supports in bringing in the things that I wish we had, supporting students in the language, the frameworks that I think the program was really missing. And so, yeah, I think I feel really excited about that work and really honored to do that and, create a memorable learning experience for students. Because we're really we're talking about community. We need to be in community, right? Like we're in New York. We need to actually do the research and the work, both the personal work that it takes, because so much of this work is it's invitation based, it's relationship based. We can't just show up to spaces and be like, I'm going to fix your problems. That's problematic. So helping think through a lot of the decisions and the choices they're making around design and interrupting those assumptions that they have around power, around their own identities and how they show up in the world. Really exciting. And I know y'all are also educators.
Yeah.
So
we can have a bit more of exchange in a little bit about that. But I'm so curious. There's something that we spoke about informally, virtual scribe. Tell me what that is and how.
Yeah, what is that?
Yes. That's a newer thing that I'm also exploring. Sometimes you'll see it as virtual scribing, virtual facilitation, a visual facilitation, and it's a way to support. So you're in a listening stance and you're also drawing or capturing the essence of a conversation. And so it's really helpful in spaces where people are gathering to do deep thinking work or are in a meeting space. So you're the scribe. You're like the person who's interpreting, to a sense, what you're hearing and making sure that there's a record or a document. So it's like a merge of illustration, listening deeply, and then creating an artifact or a visual for people to then come back to. So, even
like
this conversation could be scribed. Yeah, takeaway. There's, the highlights, the key learnings. So it's a way to also help people land, and there's a synthesis that's happening, and it's your takeaway, your cheat sheet, if you will. So I've also been learning more of that, and there's a lot of opportunities in that space too for
y'all should really see my face right now. I
sustainable
am impressed.
work.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, that
so if you're a doodler, it's also a good way.
It's a doodler. Doodling also can be incorporated in that. I love that. That sounds so useful. And also informally, we talked a bit about publishing and we know about your graphic design
Yeah.
capabilities. What are you publishing? Tell me.
It's on pause right now, but myself and some friends have a small zine that we run called Colmado. And it's about like sharing our experiences, Dominican first gen folks, and to grow up, in the diaspora and exploring that through poetry, visual language. And I'm always like making stuff that I share with the world. So posters, some letterpress, stickers. And, sometimes it's like towards a cause. So around the liberation of Palestine, I've like created materials that I've been able to share with folks. So that's where you could find me in the print shop, making posters, tinkering around. And I really, I think we need printed media. Like, I think print is so important to our movements to, reach lots of folks. So I really love that aspect of it. So some of it is just for me and my friends. And then just, sometimes I send them out to organizations and I'm like, take this to a protest, like share this with your constituents. That's been really, really fun. And I try to do as much of it as I can.
Fantastic.
Okay. And so is the print shop your like main workspace outside of teaching, or do you have another workspace? Like, what does your creative workspace look like to fill all of what you're doing?
Well, my creative workspace is part of this tiny apartment that I have. It's like everything that's behind me and around me. And most recently, I have started going to the Gutenberg print shop in North Jersey, which is where I met Krystle. And so I've only been going for about a year, and it's such a magical space. Like, I am so excited that I landed there, and I pop in and out of different spots in New York because I'm like always on the go, but I feel like the Gutenberg space is really nourishing to me because I've been able to find community, like you said. So, and I kind of started just like, I went to one workshop and then the next day there was another workshop. So I went to that. And then the other day, next week, there was another thing happening. So I just started showing up and making stuff with people there from like, there's a mending group that's there once a month. And I've been able to bring like my family and my little ones, my little nibblings in the world. So it's been a space for me to go and be in making with others without like a lot of like pressure around the thing,
Shout out to Upcycle Coalition at Gutenberg Arts. Yes. That's run by my friend Talita.
I love that. And can you share with us how you developed your sense of design?
Yes, that's a good question. So much of it, I think, comes from the printmaking practice that I developed, as a younger person. And I don't have like formal graphic design training. And I think now there's just so many tools that have made that more accessible for folks to learn. But I think it's like taking in a lot of visuals. Like I collage and I have tons of sketchbooks and I'm always like learning new medium, if you will. So I think, a lot of it is like just my own mark making, like the way that I like to carve and when I'm doing relief prints and how I like things to be arranged and like what I feel I'm inspired by the world around me. Like right now I'm in my like textile era. Like I'm really into learning more about fibers and embroidery and like stitching work. So, and I bring that into like the visual practice. So sometimes I'll create stuff physically and I'll scan it into my computer, like some wood cuts or stamps, and then I'll create the motif by hand and then scan it and create like a digital version of that. So I'm learning. I learned from others too. I'm like, oh, well, what's working for y'all? I just learned about Adobe Fresco, which you can like use on your iPad. It's like, it's like Procreate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's the Adobe version, but what's really great about it is it creates vectors, because that's like another thing that I'm like, so if you,
how is that different than from Illustrator?
I guess it just allows for more like painterly things. So
I see.
You can be a little more free with the kind of design that you're making, and then it'll or in the translating it into vector. I'm still learning that new program, but I'm always like, learning. And so that's someone shared that with me because they do a lot of visual scribing on their iPad. I was like, oh, cool. Let me go learn about this.
That is cool. Adobe
and
Fresco.
I think that's so important what you said, because essentially you are a constant student right? And I think that's very important, especially for those after they, get their masters and they go out into their career. It's important to keep your mind malleable and open to different ways of making, because that could only help you evolve and transform and to look at things in different perspectives and to create things in different ways. So thank you for definitely sharing that.
Yes, forever a learner. I know. I'm like, should I go back to school every day? I'm like, no, stop. It's expensive. But I do subscribe to this, like, being a learner, like life learner. There's so much to learn. There's so much to, like, and that's why I love going to like workshops and just seeing people's practice and what they're bringing into the space. Yeah, and sharing as much as I can with what I know.
Wonderful. And so you seem as if, I know that you have a lot of responsibilities, and in all that you juggle, what does rest look like for you as a full-time working designer, art, creative maker? What would be your title? What would you like to be called?
Overall, an artist, designer, and yeah. And
Wonderful.
part of it is, yeah, I struggle sometimes. I'm like, am I an artist? Am I creative? I know I'm not a content creator. Like, I'm not out here to just make stuff, put myself on brand. But I do think being an artist is about, having a worldview, right? Like really able to shape the world through the things that you're making, whether that's through writing, your, whatever paper thing you're making or not, you're putting to the page. So yeah, I do want to sit more with that and own more of that for myself. And rest.
Yes, rest for the working artist.
Rest. I like to go on walks. So I've been in my hot girl walk era as well.
Nice.
I think I shared that I try to subscribe to a 4-day work week so that Fridays are my like chill day. And that's like, I can actually take care of myself, do all the things I need to do. But yeah, I spend time with my people, my friends, my family. I'm really fortunate to have a great support system. And yeah, I have some travel when I can. And yeah, just do things that are going to fill my cup, right? Like I'm a part of a community garden. I try to do things that are, I've been going bird watching with groups. So that's like a new thing too.
Community garden and bird watching. That is fantastic. I love those.
Just try to be out in nature as much as possible.
Yes.
Because you're living in a more urban area, so there's a lot less trees and nature. So being intentional is important for you to make that time and space for that, I'm sure.
It's really helpful.
And as we go into this component where we talk a bit more about finances, tell us a little bit about how you are able to jump into all these projects, but then manage your time and your expenses to both manage output, taxes, so on and so forth. You tell me where you want to start.
Listen, it's definitely been a learning experience. And especially when I was in my like traditional 9-to-5 role, my nonprofit job, I was like, I don't know how these teaching artists who would come in and teach a class, I was like, I don't know how they're doing it. It looks so hard. And it is really hard. But the first thing I did was start an LLC so that there was a way to kind of separate my personal finances from whatever my business was making. And, getting into contract work with people, making sure that there's clear MOUs or mutual agreements, mutual understandings around the kind of work. So if you're developing a scope, making sure that there's a pay schedule so you could get paid on time, and just being really clear about what the deliverables are. And in the beginning, I was really bad at that. I was like, oh, you want this? And I would over deliver. I would always over deliver. I was just doing so much work. But now that I'm kind of gaining more experience about really, listening to what the client needs and being like, this is what it is and this is what it costs, and being really comfortable in that, which, is always like brings up a lot of anxiety for me. So part of it is like the scoping and the contracting work, even before you get started. And something that's really been helpful to me is to have, right now, I do have one job that's part-time. That's like That way there's some tax forward thinking that I'm doing so that I can hold just some little cushion for that. And what's the other thing around the
So a mix of W-2 and your 1090s.
Yes, the 1090 work. I save every time I get a check. I put a portion aside towards taxes. I got an accountant who does bookkeeping because I was, the first few years I was just winging it. And then I was like, oh, you cannot wing this. Like you need someone to teach you. Also, like you have to expense things, like what's acceptable to expense, and having a bookkeeper. And she's awesome. She's also Latina, first gen, and she's really passionate about the numbers. And I'm like, I love that for you. I can't handle it. Please help me. And being vulnerable, being like, I don't know how to do this. I don't understand how taxes work, and to have to learn those things, learning to save as well. Like I opened a Roth IRA.
Big girl things.
I know. I was like, I have to now think about my own retirement and my future.
So that's like a SEP. You do a SEP? The individual.
I don't know about SEP. What's that?
Yes. I've also heard of the individual retirement savings account. There's some other word that I forget what SEP means, but the SEP is also, there's a certain amount.
Maybe not a SEP.
Okay. So the Roth IRA pre-tax or pre-tax post-tax?
I think it's pre, but again, not a tax professional here.
Yeah. We're just sharing what we do.
It is important to have some sort of savings account because you are assuming responsibility around your own retirement, which is very interesting. But yeah, so part of it is like I have these steady contracts that I try to build at least 6 months with some clients. Sometimes it's 3 months, 3 weeks. If they're interested, I'm like, oh, maybe we could create a retainer. So, the retainer is like every month, there's a certain amount of hours I can dedicate to this project. So, I'm always like trying to like have more things come in. And sometimes it's nice when things end because then I can move on and make space for other projects. But it's learning.
That is a lot of learning. So if you're comfortable to share, so how far out do you have work booked to?
So I have one contract that spans a year, and then I have one project that's like 6 months. And those are like some thickums, like they're thickums. Through is paid. They're gonna make sure like my baseline is met. And then everything else that can come in that's like, I'm teaching this semester. It's just one semester. So I know that that's happening. And I kind of tend to plan around the school calendar, which is like, summer tends to be really slow. People are on vacation, but come September, people are ready. Before the end of the year, people are like, oh, we have a little extra left. Can you come in and do this thing? So yeah, it's kind of like just learning the ebbs and flows. I didn't know that in the beginning. So my first summer, I was like, oh, snap. Like, what's going on?
Right.
Super quiet. So that's kind of what's been working right now. And then I think, just staying open, which is partially why I'm always like trying to learn more things and expand my skill set. But also, things are always changing. Like I had a lot of contracts post-pandemic when everyone was really doing racial equity work because I had done a lot of racial equity training in the public school space. And then there was a boom, right? Like after George Floyd, people were like investing in DEI and bringing in training and education. And that has like, for the most part, tapered, if not disappeared, which is really scary, which speaks to this moment that we're in, which is like, we need education. So just unfortunate. But then I was like, oh, wow, like I can't just do racial equity training work, right? Like I have to have more things on my plate. Or then it was like, we went from in-person to then virtual learning and teaching. And I was lucky because I was working already on some national things where I was working with people already over Zoom. So then I was like, okay, people need to learn how to use Zoom now. And I had to like help people do that. But it is really about staying flexible and adaptable, and then also asking for support, because sometimes like, I really just don't know how to do this thing. Help me figure this out. And people are always, helpful in surprising ways. I think that often I'm like, oh, very grateful.
Wow. I mean, I'm really impressed because your nimbleness really allows you to take on so many jobs and skills that are tangential to the things that you are maybe immediately well versed in, but then you're also willing to expand to allow for growth of your service offerings, and which seems like it's also expanding your community. In that, from what I'm understanding, you're going to conferences, you're engaging professionally and also informally with individuals that then fuels your practice as an artist, but then also in your service space with organizations. So, I mean, wow, that is quite an ecosystem. I love it.
It is an ecosystem for sure.
Wow. And is there anything that you'd like to ask us? I know we talked a bit about teaching earlier. And is there questions that you'd like to ask us about teaching in higher ed?
Well, so many things, but how's it going, first of all? This is my first year. So do y'all have advice for first year? I don't know what group or what age. I don't know what is the grade level? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so to give you an understanding,
Kind of student, yeah.
Marlon and I in our MFA program, we also were teachers assistants. So throughout our time or 3 years, at least 2 of the years, we were instructors of record, initially assisting a faculty, and then after that, managing our own course and lesson plans and all that comes with that. And so we kind of started to build our understanding, and I'm going to not talk for Marlon fully, but Marlon will tell you his thing in a bit. But I built a lot of my understanding as to how to structure. Well, I'm teaching studio courses, but I've also taught lecture, which is different and hard. It is hard. And I think it has really helped me now. So I would say we're now in my 5th year is it 5th? So 2, 4, maybe like 4 years. This is the 4th year of teaching in higher ed. And I would say the challenges for me immediately is figuring out what is a lesson plan for an introductory class and what to hold back for the advanced students to make sure the students aren't lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes you're so excited that you just want to give them everything. And you're like, all right, but that is too much all at once. And on the other end, it's probably very overwhelming for them. And so knowing how to hold back and teach with a student-centered value of focusing on kind of seeing the lay of the land in your first assignment to see where their challenges are, where their weaknesses lie, to then be able to nudge more skill sets in that direction versus another direction. Because you can have these general lessons that you do every semester, but every set of students have different skills that you will have to really figure it out whether they need challenge in a different area, because it could be that your lesson just becomes easy for them, or it could be too challenging and they need more support in another area. And so really being intuitive and perceptive about who you have in your class and who you're teaching, the individuals that are in the course, I think is what has been most successful to me. But then you're also dealing with the culture of students today, and that's a whole nother thing. I'm gonna let Marlon talk first before I go into the culture.
Yeah, so I want to say, Chris, we're in our 5th year of teaching higher ed, if we include our time as instructors on record in grad school. We started in 2020. But as far as advice, I would definitely advise you to give yourself grace, within your first year. And a bit of advice that I received, not directly, but kind of indirectly. One, we had a classmate of ours. She was a little bit older, and she helped me look at the learning environment as a place where we all learn. We're all here to learn. Even the instructors, we're all here to learn, and it should be a experience of exchange between ideas and knowledge rather than I know everything and I'm imparting this knowledge on you. So opening yourself up to even learn from the students, because there's things that they know that could also help strengthen you and also strengthen your ability to teach moving forward. And I think I got the same message from the artist Kara Walker. When she started teaching, she was in her early 20s. So she was around the same age as her students. And she also realized that it's very important to go in with an open mind to work with the students rather than having this kind of authoritarian kind of structure into the classroom. And that is definitely something that really took the pressure off of me when I first started teaching. I don't have to go in there knowing everything. I just have to go in there knowing what I know and letting the students meet me halfway, and for it to be a learning experience for us all to really grow. So, but it does take some grace. It is kind of like an ego check, right? But yeah, I would say definitely, especially this being your first year, allow yourself to give yourself grace and to be honest with your students, and to also open up the space and give the message that we're all here to learn. We're in this together. So let's do this,
I appreciate both of those very deeply.
Mm-hmm.
They're already resonating because now we're closer to the end of the semester. And so part of it is like, oh, snap. Did they learn stuff? Like, what are they learning? What are they going to take away as we're getting closer to wrap up? But that really resonates around like finding the balance, but also like figuring out positionality and power and like the exchange that's happening. So yeah, that really.
Yeah. I think the thing I would add to all that Marlon has said is every generation has a different relationship with work. And I think or generation.
That's our lesson. That is our lesson now. That's Chris's and I's lesson as instructors that we're learning from our students.
Like, oh my God, like the relationship that our generation as like solid millennials have with work is very different from the relationship that, Gen Z and everyone in the mix got with work in my classrooms. And it'd be frustrating sometimes.
They really champion the self-care out here. They really champion the self-care. They're like,
I have to really sit in the place of reminding them that, look, you earn these grades. I don't give you grades. You earn them. You see the rubrics and you see what you go get based on what you put in. And with that, I wash my hands and I wish them the best. And I'm giving them all that they need to thrive. But if you don't meet your part of the bargain, it is not me to be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing backflips. You just missed the mark.
Yeah, do what you have to do.
That it is what it is. And so I think, again, that empathy with them comes into play a lot. It will constantly try your patience, and you gotta just take a deep breath.
Yes.
And respond with love and care and hope that they will continue to do good and also do better. So that's kind of my my answer to that.
No, I love it. And I also realized like folks don't like I got hired, but it was like I don't get to hear from all the other teachers. Like, I feel like everyone just kind of does their own thing.
Yeah.
And part of what I'm curious about is like, oh, like who's talking to each other about like what they're doing in the classroom. And like I said, I have a co-teacher, so that's really helpful. But I'm like, if I were doing this by myself, and because we're all working professionals and, at least at the graduate level, it's mostly evening courses. And, the students are very overwhelmed, like what you said. The graduate program, they're doing a lot of different things all at once.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like we don't get to talk to each other as faculty to be like catching up.
It's very true. And I think for me, I did a K through 12 certification. Well, I almost finished a K through 12 certification. I did everything but the practicum. That's when I realized it was not for me. And so I had some previous understanding of classroom management and some of the facilitation needed in an educational space, but of course not attuned to higher ed. And so going into my MFA and, having the experience of kind of being thrown, for the most part, the TA ship is you kind of being thrown into the water and sinking or swimming. To be honest. And because most higher ed educators, they don't do certifications in education.
Yeah.
That's just the case. And so they're just teaching their experiences outside of the university offers various learning experience to build those skills of classroom management and some of those intricacies in regards to using the Canvas if it's Canvas or Blackboard if it's Blackboard, and the online places that you may have to facilitate your classes. And outside of that, you're really on your own. And so it's conversations with other faculty and truly frailing until it seemed like something hit. It's how we've been making it.
The last thing I'm interested in too is there's a move to unionize workers, faculty members at my institution, which is very exciting because I am learning there's just a lack of pay transparency. There's also the chair gets to decide a lot of how people are paid, and that's not always reflected in the fairness of it all. Like, so I'm getting a little juicy where I'm at because it's people having conversations about pay. And yeah, I'm like, oh, there should be more protections for folks, especially because at least for me, like I'm a faculty. I don't know if I'm going to be hired next year. I don't, it's very like tenuous. Like, you don't know, like you don't know what's next. And so I'm learning and I'm excited about the possibility of just like also being like, oh, like as a worker, like what are we're pouring so much into our students. Like I only get paid for contact hours, for example. But there's so much other work that goes into the curriculum building, the relationship building, the emails, the reading of the things, the, reviewing materials. And so that's unpaid labor. And so, the organizer in me and activist is like, ooh, I'm like, everybody start signing these cards.
Yes to all of that. So I'm at an institution that is unionized. Both our adjuncts and or full-time faculty are unionized. And in grad school, the university that Marlon and I attended was also unionized. But even within a union, the contract is only as strong as the individuals that participate and fight for it. And, so we keep it short. However, yes, I really, really passionate about workers' rights in the educational space and fighting for that at everyone. I mean, because, there's so much stipulations around what is the idea of what is labor to the university, from the university, and what actually needs to be done to get the job done. And there's, we're trying to meet in the middle. And so to have just a chair making all those decisions and the biases that, we have based on the conditions of our environment, that ain't right. It can't be making. There's too much power. There's too much power held in one space. So I wish you guys the best, and then tell me if we can help you out a little bit of what Marlon and I was able to do, because as grad students we also I worked a lot in the outreach of our union, and we supported faculty contract negotiations with the faculty at our university, the full-time faculty. So yeah, we're well versed in the organizing space and what it takes to keep a strong union.
Yes. Thank you for that. I really appreciate hearing that. And also like a part of the work that people don't talk about or that people might take for granted, or if, again.
There is a connotation that people think that where the unions are, you're paid less. It is the opposite. Where the unions are, you are paid more. And I personally, that's the first thing when I'm applying to a job at a university, which I'm not doing anymore because I'm at a place where I really love. However, I'm looking to see, is this place unionized? Because that already tells me the tone and the values of the faculty there. And as just a base level. And then there's always things that you navigate otherwise, but it kind of gives you some indication as to how the situation may be. Is it Wild Wild West, or are we talking about a collective of people with similar
I'm
interests?
in the Wild Wild West, and I'm I'm experiencing the Wild Wild West, so I'm like, oh, okay. And there are other examples out there of like really successful campaigning and.
A person that actually I know through the gallery that I work with, Robert, forget his last name now. However, he is at a university in Chicago, and he recently supported the unionization of the institution there, of the faculty. And I'm like, any unions winning collective bargaining rights at this point in time is so freaking exciting. Like I've been cheering so hard. I'm always like, because I just know it's going to create a standard for what is to come, in their positions as they advocate with each other. But last, before we go, what are you currently doing that is not paid labor, but only for you and your creative nourishment immediately? Like, what's been the weekends like? What are you up to?
Yes, what have the weekends been like? Well, I mentioned I've started embroidery, which is really fun. So I'm like stitching away. I have a 1-year-old niece who's so fun. So I'm spending time with my niece. I think I'm always like doing so many things. So I'm like, what am I doing? What am I not? But yeah, I think the embroidery feels like a fun way, or like a kind of like meditation practice also, to kind of just not be on my phone for a little and connect with my hands. And I write haikus. Me and my friends have like a little Padlet thing. We're such dorks. But we have a haiku Padlet where we just like share poetry with each other, which is really inspiring. It's always really nice to see what people are like. We're all over the country, so it's like a nice way to exchange with friends as well, through poetry. So I don't know if that answers some of the question, but yeah.
Oh, that does. That's fantastic. To needlepoint in this time in society for choice is a fantastic thing. Not because we have to, because we choose to. Yes. Understatement, Marlon.
All right, Lorena. Well, thank you again so much for taking out time of your busy schedule. And I say that emphatically, that to just tell us about your story, impart your wisdom, and just chop it up with us, with some fellow artists. You are amazing, but I don't want to leave without shouting you out or giving you the chance to shout yourself out. So shameless plug, how can we follow you? What are some things to look out for? Give us a way to keep up with you.
So go to my website. I'm lorenaestrella.com. You can follow me on Instagram at LORLY23, Lorely23. And yeah, hit me up, follow me, email me. I love a good email. And come to Gutenberg Arts so we can connect, maybe create some things. Upcycle meets once a month. So yeah, if you're in North Jersey, definitely you can find me in these Essex County, Hudson County streets. But yeah, I really appreciate y'all making the time for me. And I'm excited for folks to also expand MFAs. There's so many different kinds of MFAs that folks could be doing. Many different kinds of art practice. I'm really excited to add to that larger MFA world post-grad space.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you again.
Now we're at the point of the show where we want to hear from you, the listener. Join us on Instagram and Patreon to share your thoughts on these 2 questions. 1. How are you logistically keeping track of all the deliverables of multiple projects at a time? And 2, how are you continuing to acquire new skill sets as an artist?
Thank you for listening to our episode. The Hidden Critique is produced and hosted by us, Lemonias and Marlon Tobias. Episodes are edited by Kirsten Pettifor. Original music composed by Cesar Presa.
If you like the show, you can review and rate this podcast via Spotify. You can also like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube page.
For exclusive bonus content, subscribe to our Patreon at The Hidden Critique.